somebody else who has resigned is Steve Baker. He was deputy to David Davis, the former Brexit secretary. Welcome to the Daily Politics today. I mean, listening to your colleague there, an arch-Brexiteer, he's happy with the agreement. Why have you resigned?
Well, as David explained, anyone in government needs to decide whether or not they can support a particular policy and represent it as their own view and fully support it. Now, of course, the policy that's been decided at Chequers is the central policy of the Department for exiting the European Union, and I didn't feel I would be able to go off around the UK and Europe wholeheartedly defending and advocating it for it, and that leaves you in a position in government. If you can't do that, then you have no choice, you must resign. And so I'm afraid I've taken an extremely difficult decision today to resign from the government. So that so that I'm not put in a position where I can't fulfil my obligations.
Do you think Theresa May was offering you and the country a Brexit in name only?
The problem with this particular Brexit is that it will not allow us to have proper control of what goes on in the United Kingdom. It's the point that David made. When you listen to what's being said, the truth is we're ending up advancing, people are ending up advancing the same arguments which could be said under life in the EU under the European Communities Act. You said it yourself earlier in the programme, John, that you end up that Parliament is sovereign and it can choose to, for example, repeal the European Communities Act any time. Well, look how difficult it turns out to be to repeal the European Communities Act. So we need to get out from treaty obligations which automatically oblige Parliament to accept any particular rules and instead be in a position where what we do is a matter for us.
Right, but you must have known that this sort of deal was coming, Steve. You were a minister in the Brexit department, in that central key department. Did you know what plans were being made?
So, Joe, I don't think it's too indiscreet to point out that what has happened here has been that we've all been blindsided by this policy. You know, we were preparing a white paper which did not accord with what has been put to the Cabinet at Chequers. The white paper we were working on reflected the series of speeches which the Prime Minister made, and as has been said, this is a significant evolution from those speeches. So, you know, things have changed considerably this week, and they've changed considerably in a way which I will not be able to represent as my own policy, and therefore I can't be in the government.
So were you out of the loop? Was your department basically marginalised in this process?
Yeah, there's no way of getting around it, yes. I mean, the Secretary of State and I have resigned for reasons, and these are amongst the reasons.
And whose fault is that?
Well, I don't want to get into blaming. The reality here is that leaving the European Union is a very difficult process. One of the issues is that, for want of a better term, the establishment in this country does not want to leave the European Union. And a big mistake...
And does that include the Prime Minister?
Well, I think that the Prime Minister has made it clear that she wants to see through Brexit. But what I would say is we've made a series of mistakes. The establishment doesn't want to leave. Well, we might blame Leave campaigners to failing to persuade the establishment. But the other thing is it's no good going forward with this recalcitrant spirit of fear and supplication as we negotiate. Instead of doing things because we must, because we're forced, or because we ought, we need to positively choose to leave the European Union well, perhaps brilliantly. And I think Philip, just before I came on, said that we need to do it properly. Well, you know, we are united in this. Let's leave the European Union in a way of which we can be proud, and that means vision, ambition, determination, resolve, courage, and getting on with this job and doing it in a way which will solve the problems we have.
Are you united with Steve Baker on this?
Where I don't want to end up is the worst of both worlds. I said that when I resigned 3 weeks ago. Yes, because I think there is this danger that if you are a Brexiteer, and Steve has been consistent throughout his entire political life about this, and I respect that, you look at this deal and you think, well, this isn't what I've been campaigning for in my life. I look at it, and personally, just to correct you from earlier, I didn't campaign for Remain. I said I was voting Remain, but I never campaigned. My view is that the European Union is evolving each day as we watch, particularly on migration policy. So I would prefer that we stayed as a member on new terms, addressing the public's concerns around immigration as a member of the European Union. So we're different in terms of the outcome, but I think what we agree with is that somewhere being in the middle is not really, first of all, it's not inspiring, and it also, I don't think, is going to deliver the right future for my country.
Right, where does it leave the Prime Minister then? You've resigned, you aren't signed up to the deal. Philip Lee also resigned, is not signed up to the approach either. So that's Remainers and Leavers. Where does it leave the Prime Minister?
Well, the Prime Minister's got a policy which is supported by the Cabinet. They're all clearly willing to collectively support it. I congratulate Dominic Raab, who is a clever and determined man on his new role. It was a privilege to work with Dominic on the EU withdrawal bill. But the position it leaves the Prime Minister in is one which I wish we were not in. That a job for all of us as Conservative MPs in particular, but I would say every member of Parliament in this country, is to pause and think and reflect very carefully on the delicacy reality of the political situation, not only in the UK, but right across Europe. So there can be no question of letters going in, no questions of challenges to the Prime Minister. What we need is a change of policy and not to be challenging the Prime Minister.
Right, but haven't you just abandoned the country just when it needs stability the most? You talk about people having to take stock and think very hard before they send in letters to your colleague Graham Brady to try and trigger a leadership election. But your resignation has just stoked that.
So I'm on today saying to colleagues, everyone needs to take stock. Don't put in letters, take stock and think about policy. What we need to do is win an argument and persuade people that it's time to stand tall and proud, be confident, think about the crisis of political economy taking place right across Europe, and think about how our exit from the European Union can best position us to take advantage of the growth that's going to come from the rest of the world whilst preserving our trade links with the European Union. I think that is in everyone's best interests, and I would encourage colleagues to put all of their efforts into thinking about constructive solutions which can be offered rather than talking about mere politics. If people think it's a good idea to get into a 3-month leadership contest followed by the inevitable general election necessary to fix the numbers when exit day is so close, then they really are on another planet. It's time for everyone to simmer down, work out what they believe in, and to offer constructive solutions, and that's what I hope I will be doing.
Is that likely to happen, John?
This is an interesting, an important, I think, contribution from Steve Baker there, called for restraint to the Brexiteers, including the angry Brexiteers.
And there is real anger, isn't there?
There's certainly a great deal of anger. We've had something of the same from David Davis. Earlier today, Jacob Rees, well, he's becoming a kind of a high priest of the Brexiteers. He's been saying this is not the time to talk about the leadership. What's going on here, as I read it, a lot of these people understand if they try to force a vote of no confidence in Theresa May now, they would lose. And she would win that vote, which would leave her considerably stronger and them immeasurably weaker. That is not where we're going, I think, today. By the time you get to the big meeting today of the backbenchers at the 1922 Conservative Committee, expect some tough, hostile questions from some of the convinced, committed Brexiteers and some pretty dirty looks from their corner of the room. But equally, although this is supposed to be a private meeting, it might as well be Love Island. Everyone knows what goes on there the moment the meeting's over. It's a kind of theatre, and expect a great show of loyalty and support from very many Tory backbenchers there. So Theresa May, I think, at the end of the day, will look in some ways as if she's in a more stable and maybe even stronger position. That too, though, I think, take that with a pinch of salt, because she will still be in a very tenuous position going into the next stage of Brexit in negotiations and while she tries to handle a rather restless party.
Why wouldn't you want a true Brexiteer, as you may see it, leading the Conservative Party?
There's absolutely no point going back and revisiting the leadership contest which was. Theresa May,
but then you can get the policy you want.
I was very happy to fully support the policies which she had set out through a series of speeches. But, you know, again, it's a sort of childish naivety to think, with the clock running towards exit day, that there is any practical possibility, even if someone didn't support her as Prime Minister, of thinking that there is a constructive way forward down that path. There is not. What we need is a change of policy and not to be challenging the leader.
Why didn't Vote Leave warn people and the party that this would all be much more difficult than it's proven to be?
Well, in the course of the campaign, people must select the arguments that they think will win. Personally, I was involved with Business for Britain beforehand. I remember having several copies of the 1,000-page Change or Go, which was widely handed out. I think anyone who, like me, read the 1,000 pages of the book knew it was going to be difficult. And personally, when I was at the count, I was not amongst those leaping around celebrating, because I fully understood that this would be a difficult challenge for our country, and I will celebrate when it's been done well and it's over and behind us.
So was the country misled then in order to allow the Leave campaign to win?
Absolutely not. There's no question of that. The Remain campaign was absolutely clear. I mean, how many times did we talk about Project Fear? People were told over and over again that there might be pain. And you know what? The British people should not be underestimated. They stood tall and they decided they wanted a change to recover democratic control of political power. And they voted Leave despite Project Fear, which, incidentally, in all of those short-term predictions of immediate recession, has absolutely not come to pass. We were offered a punishment budget, which was clearly now can be seen as being a campaigning device. People tried to scare the British people into surrendering their democracy, and it's right they stood up and said no.
Is that right?
Well, look, when I resigned 3 weeks ago, I called for pausing of Article 50, and I also stated that we should go away, we should do the very best deal that you could do when you were in government, Steve, for Brexit, but we should also go to the European Union and say, look, you're moving on migration policy, where do you think you're going to, and discuss, then put those two options, new options, back to the public. I seek informed consent of the people. At the moment, in my conversations in the constituency, I have Brexiteers and Remainers saying, I didn't know it was going to be like this, I didn't know it was going to be this complicated. There is a sense that the public is a bit uneasy about this. I'm not saying it's significant, but there is a feeling. And I think personally, for the sake of my country, and indeed our party, Steve, I think we need to get that informed consent of the people, and I see no other way of doing it than going back to it with a second referendum.
And what about that? I mean, you yourself have resigned. David Davis has resigned. There isn't agreement within the Conservative Party. Is it time to go back to the people?
No, it's not. No, but Joe, look, we talked about the party's unity. I think anyone can look back at the way I handled chairing Conservatives for Britain. I mean, one of the things one of the reasons I did it, one of the ways I did it was to try and keep the Conservative Party together during that period. The first interview I did was with Damien Green on this programme, and we came in friends, we went out friends. And I hope and expect that we can get through whatever difficulties lie ahead and keep the Conservative Party together, because no one should be any doubt the real existential threat to prosperity in this country is John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party.
All right, let's have a look at this tweet from, I think this was from Kate McCann at The Telegraph, and it's about David Davis and the fact that actually some of the motivation behind his resignation was that he was extremely irritated about the heavy-handedness as he saw it. Pre and leading up to that Chequers meeting, being told that phones were being taken away all day, that ministerial cars wouldn't be taking back cabinet ministers who resigned. Did that irritate him?
Well, it certainly irritated me. I was absolutely furious with the childish nonsense being issued by Number 10. Absolutely unequal to the task at hand. Frankly, I was furious. I could almost have resigned just over the childishness of that briefing. We are in a position where when the history of the last 10 years is written and the summaries are read, the summaries will show that this was a profound crisis of political economy, both in the financial system and in the politics of Europe. And it will become obvious that what we need today is great statesmanship, the like of which few people are equal. What we don't need is childish briefing against colleagues. There was an untruth told about whether or not I'd had promotion dangled in front of me. No such conversation was had. I checked with the other colleagues. They had not had conversations about having their ambitions tested for promotions, and yet it was briefed out as if any of us could be bribed. I am absolutely furious about it. But was it enough to take me out of government? No, certainly not.
Right, but who do you blame for that? I mean, it came from Number 10. That was the briefing that we all received on Friday.
Think, so it would be in all of our interests if I didn't name the particular individual who I would hold accountable, but he will know who he is.
Right, but somebody at Number 10. I mean, this is something that is coming from the heart of government.
So you asked me the question, I've said my piece. We need to make sure that what the behaviour we get from right across government and right across the backbenches is wholly focused on the national interest, going forward as one country and leaving the European Union not just well but brilliantly, so that we can contribute to solving a set of crises which are afflicting all of Europe and I dare say to an extent the United States.
Is the Number 10 operation up to the job?
Well, it will have to be. There is no changing it.